Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all the attendees of the Cyber Jungle Virtual Summit. My name is Ashish Thapar, and I'm the Managing Principal for Verizon Threat Research Advisory Center. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about how to stay alive, right? It's all about staying alive in this complex and chaotic world of cyber attacks. Given the current situation, it's all the more important to stay safe with insights from the confirmed data breaches and incidents that I'm going to be sharing with you today. So stay tuned and let's dive into the topic. Before that, I'll just quickly introduce myself. My name is Ashish Thapar, like I said, and I have about 18 plus years of experience in multiple cybersecurity disciplines. I head the team for, VTrack, like I mentioned earlier, and, we kind of deal into cyber incident response, threat intelligence, and digital forensics investigations. I'm author of several white papers, articles, publications. I've been an active speaker in the industry. I'm also acting as a lead mentor for a number of cybersecurity startups, and I have, obviously got some certifications on the way while I, kind of got more experience in the cybersecurity disciplines. The team that I represent, Verizon Threat Research Advisory Center, we do a lot of work on cybersecurity investigations for hundreds of commercial enterprises and government agencies worldwide. We conduct a lot of proactive work, right? Incident response readiness assessments, executive breach simulations, tabletop exercises, mergers and acquisition assessments, threat hunting assessments, and a lot of value-adding engagements that can really help organizations be prepared and be ready to handle, because obviously it's not a question of if, it's a question of when these things can really go bad. And because of that experience, we also gather all these insights and basis that we create these thought leadership publications like Data Breach Investigation Report, Data Breach Digest, which is more of a practitioner's view of how you can really can actually live through the life of a security incident or a breach and really understand what went well, what went wrong, and what are the learnings from it. We also have a publication called Insider Threat Report, which is obviously a very intricate and complex threat to tackle. So we do go into those details in that report. And a report like Verizon Incident Preparedness and Response Report, we call it VIPER, which also goes into the proactive element of being in that always ready mindset to deal with the data breaches. And then, of course, things like Payment Security Report, that's something we produce every year as well. So diving into the Data Breach Investigation Report, this is the 13th year of our publication. And we are very proud that I think we've really got support from a lot of contributors over a period of time. And we are very proud that it's not a Verizon only report. It's a report that in which we try to remove a lot of bias, and biases do exist, right? We are very transparent and we acknowledge that part. And to remove these biases, we try to get as much collaboration globally, from different participants or contributors. There are 81 contributors in this year's report, and try to make it more meaningful for our readers. In this report, we are talking about 32,000 odd incidents and about 4,000 odd breaches. And there is a very important difference in between the world of incident and breaches. So incidents, we define it as any negative event that had a impact on the confidentiality, integrity, or availability of an asset. And breaches are defined as confirmed data loss events. So there is a very clear distinction between the two. Like I mentioned earlier, as you can see, 81 contributing organizations, and pretty much the who's who in the world. Very respectable organizations have joined hands with us, and global organizations, right? So you have Federal Bureau of Investigation, U.S. Secret Service, you have Australian Federal Police in Asia Pacific. You have other organizations across Europe. You have CERT Europe, and multiple CERT organizations even in Asia Pacific. And security organizations, security product companies that are sometimes, most of them are leaders in their own space, have joined hands with us to create this report. And I think that's something that really helps us not only get a wider coverage of data, but also very importantly, try to remove that biases that may exist from a single vendor report kind of perspective, right? So like I said, we are very, very transparent, and we really acknowledge that fact that we must remove this bias and try to make it as better as we can. So what's new? I think a lot of people really have been following our reports for a number of years now. What we have new in this year's report is essentially, we're talking about small and medium business segment. It's important because we thought that this is one segment that not really gets the same amount of support and funding to fight against the cyber adversaries, and how they really compare and contrast with the breaches on large companies. I think that's something we thought would be very interesting, and we do have that covered in the report. And we also have regional segments. For the first time, we have gone into the regional nuances as to what do we see from the perspective of different regions, whether it is North America, EMEA, Asia Pacific, or Latin America and the Caribbean. So we've gone into those details. We also have about 15 industry vertical segments clearly called out in the report. And last year we had 9. So we've increased this data set because we have more and more data coming, and now we can really cut through the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and really focus on the the important elements or focus areas that different organizations may have different things to really manage, right? And it is a fact. I'll try to cover some of those in today's presentation, but bear in mind, this is it's a very long report. It's a detailed report. I will try to do my best to kind of do some justice to at least bring out some key insights from it in today's session. And also, for the first time, we have mapped our report to some of the external standards, like MITRE ATT&CK framework from a threat TTP perspective, tactics, techniques, and procedures, as well as the Center for Internet Security, critical security controls. VERIS, for those who don't know and may want to look under the hood, VERIS is vocabulary for event recording and incident sharing, and this is kind of rock foundation of our report for many years now. We made it open source, or rather publicly available on GitHub. So this framework is the entire schema is available on GitHub, and we also talk about in the schema with respect to A4 grid. So we basically from the perspective of who are the threat actors. That's the first A, and what are the actions that they did? That's the second A. What assets that they compromised or impacted? The third A, and the fourth A is the attribute of the asset, which is confidentiality, integrity, and availability that could have been compromised. So that's something which is new in the report. Now let's kind of have a look at what are the key insights. When I talk about the key insights, I would really want to start with this very favorite chart of mine. I call it the snake chart. And this chart is essentially about trends that we have seen over a period of time with respect to action varieties. Remember, I talked about A4 grid and threat actions. So what are the threat actions and how they have been really kind of varying in terms of breaches over a period of time? So certain important insights emerge. About 67% of the breaches actually have 3 things. One of the 3 things, right, they're contributing as threat actions. It is either social actions, which is phishing or business email compromise, right? And it is use of stolen credentials is there as well. Also errors. So in between social actions, use of stolen credentials, and errors, they contribute to about 67% of the total breaches that we've seen, right? That's a huge number. And if you see, on the slide here, you can easily make out that the errors have been really going up in terms of in last few years, right? That particular threat action variety is going up significantly, and it's not like it's just happening because people just started, making mistakes, more often than not. Well, that's one of the reasons, but that's not the primary reason. Some of the reasons that we have kind of understood is that a rushed migration to the cloud environments. I call it digital disruption, forced digital disruption, as we have seen in the COVID-19 times as well in recent months. So that's something driving those kind of unprepared deployments, not really thought through kind of, deployment scenarios where not a lot of due diligence was conducted, and suddenly, something was done, or in a rush, something was done. So those kind of things may lead to errors, which could be misdelivery, or misconfiguration in the first place, as well as publishing errors on the storage buckets on the cloud environment. So that's there. And of course, the regulatory reporting has really increased with many countries, enabling those statutes to really mandate regulatory reporting of incidents and breaches. That also is one of the strong factors where, these reporting requirements, because of these reporting requirements, these numbers have possibly gone up as well. Other things that may have gone down, for example, RAM scraper. RAM scraper has significantly come down in terms of the threat action. And the reason for that is because of point of sale attacks have gone down. And why they have gone down is because of chip and pin technology being rolled out big time. And, obviously the fraudsters, everybody looks for return on investment, right? Fraudsters are no different. So they would want to focus on card not present scenarios versus card present scenario, because in the card present scenario, they get impediments in their path because of the chip and pin technology advancements that have happened and rollouts that have happened in the region. So they are increasingly shifting to online attacks that may include attacks that are similar to JavaScript sniffing, image card type of attacks, or even compromising web servers, those kind of scenarios. So again, card not present, but more online attacks, and that's why you see they're not really focusing on point of sale systems a lot nowadays, and that's why you see RAM scraper coming down significantly in the last few years. Ransomware, as you can see, is going up as from this chart, but I will definitely cover that in the later stage. Now, moving on to a very important point that I think we also make for a number of years now is about the detection gap. I call it the detection gap, right? So you see there are 4 charts on the right-hand side from compromise, exfiltration, discovery, and containment. And as you can see, compromise happens quite quickly. Now, remember, I talked about the top threat actions in the snake chart that I talked about. You saw phishing and use of stolen credentials right at the top, right? When you can compromise a user to click on something and do what you want them to do, it's easy game after that, right? The second thing is if you have the keys to the door, right? Why would you want to bang the door? Why would you want to break it? So again, very easy, right? When you have the keys to the door, which is basically stolen credentials, that really can work. Well, you can get in very quickly, and that's what you see in compromise. Very short timelines, right? We're talking about minutes, hours, or days. Exfiltration, very quickly, of course, because once the compromise is done, exfiltration really follows, and you just need to find out a jump host or a exfiltration point to kind of launch and kind of exfiltrate data outside. But discovery, on the contrast, has been quite slow in the last few years, and in fact, something that I think really needs a lot of improvement as we go forward. But we do see some silver lining in this particular part, and I would say that the silver lining essentially is because mainly we see a lot of technology components that is helping organizations to detect things faster. So we have things like endpoint detection response, network detection response, orchestration engines like SOAR, SIEM technology, properly deployed proper use cases implemented, has helped organizations to detect things faster. And also managed security services organizations like Verizon have also kind of upped the game in terms of helping the customers. So that's one. The second point is that the discovery is happening a little faster than before. In the past few years, we used to see it in months and years, but now we see that trajectory moving towards days, months, weeks. So a little bit positive development. So one reason I gave you in terms of the detection rates increasing, but second thing is not a very positive reason, but ransomware is increasing as well, and ransomware doesn't need detection. It shows up in terms of collateral damage right on your face, right? So that's another reason why detections are happening faster than before. So we do have this particular dwell time really decreasing to an extent. However, there is, I think there is still a long road to kind of traverse. So discovery in months or more still accounts for over a quarter of breaches, and still a lot of work to be done on that side. All right, so while we have looked at this, now let's have a look at the important elements, the A4 grid that I talked about, the actors, actions, assets, and attributes, right? So in terms of the actors, who are the guys? Who are these bad guys who do this, right? Where do they come from? So essentially these attackers are mainly external. I think this had been kind of trend for a number of years in our report. In terms of external attackers, because of the bias itself, right? The number bias, it would always be higher than the internal attackers because of the sheer number of attacks that can happen on your perimeter from the outside of your organization, right? Whether it is to the perimeter. In fact, today, nowadays, the definition of perimeter has actually kind of blurred a bit, right? You have perimeter all over. Even your one of your employees' laptop is perimeter pretty much. So external attacks obviously are very high in number, so about 70 to 80, 75%. But internal attacks are also significantly higher. I would say 35 odd percent. The main point is, in terms of numbers, the external attacks are high, but it doesn't mean that internal attackers are something that you can really lose sight of. You cannot take your eyes off that particular angle, and you must pay importance to the insider attackers, because one, they are difficult to find, and second, they're very it's a very intricate matter to actually detect those things and kind of manage those things, right? And where do they come from, these actors? Primarily, I would say 55 odd percent come from the organized crime syndicates. And there is a reason for it, right? If you look at the dark web, you look at the cryptocurrencies like Monero, for example, anonymous, kind of pretty much the kind of level of anonymity that these currencies and these marketplaces, the dark web, really provides is a fertile ground for these organized crime syndicates to kind of raise their heads, right? So you have a purpose, and these numbers are quite high on the organized crime syndicates. You do have nation and state affiliated units also kind of in the play, not to such a high number, but about 10 odd percent. And you do have the internal insider threats, system administrators, end users also, in the battleground there. And you do have sometimes, your lone wolves that are unaffiliated at this time and possibly may join a group, but there are those kind of actors as well in the foray. Now, what are the motivations? So we understood about where do these actors come from? Who are they? What are their motivations is another very important point, because once you understand the motivation, you can really defend yourself a little better, right? You can design your countermeasures, your controls in such a manner. You can manage, depending on the motivation, you can really identify which data and what are they after, right? So mostly about, about 80 to 90% of the cases, the attackers are after money. So mainly you have financial motives. And then, espionage motives are pretty much a mirror image of that percentage. So, you have about, 15 to 20% out there in the espionage motive in the breaches, right? So that's on the breaches, which is in the chart in the middle. But when you look at the incidents, which is not confirmed data loss events, remember I gave you the definition of incidents and breaches right out at the top. When you look at incidents, we are looking at secondary motives higher than espionage, and they suddenly appear. There were no secondary motives in the breaches, but we do see secondary motives quite significantly in the incidents. And the reason for that is the compromised infrastructure in these secondary motive incidents or motivation incidents is where they are not the main target. These companies that get attacked, or this infrastructure that get attacked, is not the main target, but they are a means to another attack. So they are basically used as a launch pad to attack other companies. And there also comes an element of supply chain attacks, which is also something that we have seen in the past with a number of breaches and incidents. Moving on from the actors, talking about the actions. So I think in terms of the actions, what we are seeing is something that has been consistently increasing year over year in terms of frequency is error as an action, right? We do have hacking and social still at the top, but error is increasing. And I give you some reasons, reasoning in terms of, why error could be increasing, because of mainly regulatory requirements, reporting requirements, obviously being mandated. That's one. And second is a lot of cloud migration, which is not done with a lot of thought through, a lot of brain applied, and you kind of have a hushed up migration or transition to cloud that pretty much results in these kind of mistakes or errors as such. While hacking and social are down, but they still kind of hovering around the similar percentages in past few years. And I'll go into details in terms of the hacking and social actions, or rather I would definitely talk about the malware as well, because that's something while on the chart it appears that it's quite low, it doesn't mean that malware is insignificant. No, it is not. It is used in certain situations and scenarios. It may not be the first threat action that could have led to the initial compromise, right? In terms of the initial compromise, mainly we are seeing hacking, number one, secondly, social, and third, errors that have gone significantly up in last few years. So getting into the details of these threat actions or action varieties, so to say, hacking to start with. So we are talking about hacking, which essentially comes from the perspective of use of stolen credentials. So most of the hacking varieties, I would say 80 to 90% we see mainly brute force attacks or use of stolen credentials. Maybe I can step back and I can define hacking for you, right? So how we define hacking in the Veris framework, the vocabulary for event recording and incident sharing, is that hacking essentially is an event where an attacker's infrastructure is being used to launch an attack, whether it is manual or automated, right? So in terms of manual, you're talking about hands on the keyboard kind of thing, right? Automated could be some tools being used. So this is called hacking. I will get into malware later, but malware is a bit of distinction between these two. Malware is defined in our Veris framework as action that basically results because of a victim infrastructure launching a binary or a software code, right? So hacking, you normally have the attacker's infrastructure launching that thing, and in malware, you have the victim infrastructure actually initiating that particular binary or executing that binary. So very clear distinction there. So talking about hacking on the current slide, we are mainly talking about use of stolen credentials or brute force, and we are also talking about exploitation of vulnerabilities. In fact, in the report, we go into details about how these vulnerabilities are exploited and how many percentage of vulnerabilities of the total set, and there are numerous amount of vulnerabilities that get exposed, patches come out, but only a smaller subset of those vulnerabilities get exploited for obvious reason. Maybe they are because they are remote code exploitation vulnerabilities. They do not need authentication. So, there are reasons and means because of which this particular scenario emerges. And how hacking happens in terms of vectors? Loud and clear, right? 90 to 95% of the cases, you're talking about web applications. So the next time you publish a web application, you need to be very careful about what are you going to do about that security of the web application in terms of the authentication layer. Combine that with the hacking variety. You're talking about stolen credentials, brute force. How are you managing those authentication APIs? Are you really implementing multi-factor authentication to safeguard your web application, which is pretty much leading to the heart and soul of your organization? So web applications, of course, and then of course things like backdoor or C2 desktop sharing software. We've seen a smaller number, and these are mainly the vectors through which these kind of attacks are happening from a hacking varieties perspective, right, in the actions. When we talk about the errors, now that's the other hacking variety. In the errors, we are mainly seeing misdelivery. Misconfiguration has gone significantly up. As I mentioned, those cloud migrations, not every time they have gone well. So we do see those issues. And I think that's where the importance of processes come into play, right? You can implement the best of technology, and technology pretty much follows garbage in, garbage out principle, right? The GIGO principle. But if you do not have a robust governance and procedural controls around ensuring that your technology is working well, you've configured it well in the first place, you really can't go too far with just having a technology in place, right? So that's an important point. So you see misconfiguration, misdelivery, and of course publishing errors in terms of cloud, storage buckets that has led to a significant amount of breaches. In terms of how the discovery happens in these breaches that had error as a threat action variety, well, majority of it happens through security researchers, and there are a lot of security researchers that are active nowadays, right? There are some bug bounty programs at times that are launched by some organizations that are mature, but you do have a lot of researchers that report these. Sometimes there are external third parties that report, and also customers, which is quite embarrassing to be honest, report those kind of breaches. And of course, there are some internal crusaders that can also help you detect certain things, which is pretty much something that you would want those to see those numbers going up, right? So that's on the errors. Talking about malware, so this is a very interesting category, right? In fact, malware is something that we see mostly in the middle and lateral part of a breach or an incident, not towards the starting. Because like I said earlier, right, if you have keys to the door, if you can compromise a human, hack a human, you don't need to, don't need to break things, right? You can just easily get in. So when you talk about malware and something that when we do investigations, we do see about 40% of the malware that is very unique. We have not, we wouldn't have seen that malware before, and we do not even see that malware again later after an incident. So malware is quite unique, and that's why it's important that you implement, robust detection technologies, behavioral-based technologies, anomaly behavior-based technologies. In fact, doing things like threat hunting to actually detect some of these activities that can go unnoticed in the noise, and you must be able to really extract those signals from the noise. And really, you need a lot of visibility, both in terms of automation and a lot of smart people really looking at things. So in terms of malware, we are talking about malware varieties. Number one is password dumpers. Connect that back to the use of stolen credentials, right? Obviously, a no-brainer there, right? So you see things like Mimikatz and variants of Mimikatz. A lot of variants exist, in fact, nowadays we have in-memory PowerShell-based credential dumpers being used quite a lot. Ransomware is really increasing in the malware category. Currently, it is now 27% of the total breach data set which had malware incidents. And how does malware really come in? So malware really comes in with email links, as you can see on the figure 17 on the right side. It comes in through email links. It may happen through direct install, right? You are installing something, it's a freeware, you want to take some advantage, save some money. Well, not everything comes for free in this world. There are some things that come piggybacking, right? So you see have malware piggybacking certain installation when you're doing. You can also have download by malware. So it's a multi-stage situation. So you have a downloader that downloads another malware, and also through email attachments at times, right? And also web drive-by downloads. And mostly when these malware comes in documents, we call them malware-laden documentation or documents. We are talking about things like Office documents, talking about application executables, PDF documents, and other type of zipped compressed documents that come along, sometimes even with password, right? So they can actually bypass the detection technologies, and there is a password attached. All right, you know what, to the user conveying a message through a phishing email. All right, open this document with the password mentioned in the email, and there is a very important message for you to read, and people fall for it at times. That's how malware varieties really create havoc in the world of data breaches. Talking about assets. So we talked about the actors, right? We talked about the actions. What are the assets? Which assets are being attacked? So when we see that, we see number one category is server. Well, that's where the data is. So again, very obvious there, but it's shown in numbers. Remember, this report is based on actual data, and it's not a survey-based report. It's data from incidents and breaches, right? So server, number one category. You do have people assets and user devices also showing up quite close to each other at the number two spot. And the reason for that is more often than not, when a phishing attack is going on, you would want to execute something on a machine. And that's where you have user devices being attacked along with a person being attacked, right? So they are pretty much neck to neck as such. In the server category, we are talking about things like web application server. We're talking about things like, desktops or laptops in the user device categories. In the server, again, you have mail servers, you have database servers, and a host of other things. You do have, smaller percentages of media, physical media or kiosk or terminals, and as well, very small percentage on network. Remember, this chart is on breaches, not on incidents. Of course, if you have incidents, if you look at denial of service attacks or distributed denial of service attacks, you would obviously see network going up there, but this is specific to the breaches category. All right, so we've looked at actors, we've looked at the actions that they do, we've also looked at the assets that they attack. One important thing I also want to mention is the patterns. So way back in 2014, 6 years back, we actually started talking about a very interesting concept of patterns. And we actually defined 9 classification patterns, both in incidents and breaches. And even today, 85% of the security incidents and about 80% of breaches still map back to those 9 classification patterns. Whatever did not fall in those 9 classification patterns, we used to call it everything else at that point in time. Now, when you take those patterns, these are basically clusters of all those dots that we can really kind of, connect, and these clusters emerge when we put these dots on the graph. You see, in terms of the breaches, web applications are at #1 category. The #2 category is taken by everything else, which obviously has risen a lot, and it may not sound well, but everything else is basically used to be a catch-all way back in 6 years back, but today it's a #2 category, and the majority of that is actually comprised of phishing and business email compromise incidents. We do see a lot of those. In fact, in COVID-19 work from home situation, I can tell you we have seen a big uptick in the business email compromises and phishing incidents, breaches as well. Miscellaneous errors is the #3 category there in the breaches. Now, you can see, right, denial of service is right at the bottom in the incidents category. But when you look at the, in the breaches category, sorry, when you look at the incidents, you see denial of service is #1. Remember, that's where the definition of incidents and breaches come handy, that breaches are confirmed data loss events, and incidents are anything that can have impact on confidentiality, integrity, or availability. And that's why you see denial of service in terms of sheer numbers are right at the #1 spot. Crimeware, which is pretty much a superset category of all malware, including ransomware, is second. In fact, I must mention this point, right? We do see ransomware. We used to historically see ransomware for, in the incidents category, not necessarily in the breaches category a lot. But now we have started seeing, from this year onwards, January onwards, I would say, we have started seeing ransomware shifting gears. And the attackers, the cyber adversaries, are actually using ransomware to first steal information and then sabotage or encrypt information, so that they have basically, because a lot of organizations have matured their backup management strategies. So they, the bad guys, they kind of keep, upping their game. So what they have done is, now they are actually using ransomware not only for incidents but also for breaches. So I think that's a very interesting trend that we have actually started seeing in the last few months. All right, this is one of my favorite charts and bringing some color to the conversation, right? So on the left-hand side, you see not an artistic representation, but a data scientist representation of how these attacks happen. In terms of the actions, and different colors are depicted for different actions. What are the number of steps, or what are the number of steps had happened in the attack path with respect to incidents, right? So you see different trajectories, or there are long tails in the case of hacking and in the case of malware, but they are very short tails in terms of errors, in terms of misuse, right? Because those are very easy, right? Very short steps, 1 or 2, and you're done. But if I take a simplistic view and shift your focus to the right-hand side of the graph, you see a very easy to understand message appears, and we all have heard it over a period of time. Defense in depth is very, very important. And you see that when you have more than 4 or 5 steps in your defense arsenal, in your cyber defense strategy, in your countermeasures, you can really decrease the possibility of a breach. So on the right-hand side graph, you see the breaches come significantly down as soon as you have higher number of steps on the x-axis, and on the y-axis, you see the breaches numbers, right? So bottom line, very easy. Most of the successful attacks are short in nature, because likely it is cheaper and easier for the attacker to do it. And of course, they have become more successful, right? Number of steps. So I think the main takeaway I would like to leave here on this slide is that if you can really, value those small controls, small things that may not even cost you a lot of money, even simple things like, least privilege principle, simple things like network segmentation, need to know basis kind of controls, segregation of duties, right? Not storing data that you don't need, or these small controls can go a long way to create impediments in the path of the attacker. And that's why I think it's important that you understand, like I said, we've all heard the stories of defense in depth, how critical it is, how you can really have multiple layers of controls, but it is loud and clear when it is now being demonstrated and proved by data, as we see from the data breach investigation report. Taking a different view from these parts and diving a little bit into slicing an attack on from the beginning, middle to the end of an attack, a very interesting trend emerges. And I think, again, important to understand how these attacks happen and how you can really manage these threat actions. So you see, in the beginning of attack, you essentially see hacking and social actions being leveraged by the attackers. And in the middle and last part of the attack, you see malware going right on top, right? Malware was not on top in the initial stages, but in the middle and last stages, it is right on top for obvious reason, because you need malware, the bad guys rather, need malware to act on its own, take commands, and execute things on the victim infrastructure, right? So you need to pivot from one system to another, do lateral movement, go to the crown jewels, steal information, and there you go, exfiltrate towards the end of an attack. Or sometimes even stay there low and slow, even more dangerous, to kind of, from an espionage perspective, and continue your conversation with a command and control service. So you see malware kind of important in the middle and end stages of an attack. But number one category on the top in the beginning is pretty much hacking and social actions. And there you go, right? Then you can really understand the priorities as how you can really stagger your controls, stagger your focus, divide your focus in different threat actions that you need to manage. All right, so now, so far we have looked at all the actors, actions, assets. We've also looked at the categories in the actions in terms of hacking, errors, malware. We've also looked at the attack paths. Now let's in the report we also, like I said, 15 industries have been represented. Specific focus has been given. I won't be able to do justice in today's session. It's a limited time we have today, but at least I can talk about few of those industries. So talking about finance and insurance, obviously this is one of the favorite sectors that the bad guys attack, because it's all about money, honey, and as you know that majority of the motivation is financial. This sector is attacked quite heavily. So you have every segment we represent about the frequency, how many incidents and breaches in that particular sector or industry vertical. In terms of top patterns, and like I mentioned, right, patterns, we also go into details in every industry. And this is important for those security executives, so they can really understand what are the top priorities, what are the top things that they want to focus their energy, their time, effort, and money on. So in terms of the top patterns, we are talking about, in the breaches category, we are talking about web applications as number one. So in the financial and insurance space, we're talking about errors, and that could be misdelivery, misconfiguration, or publishing errors pretty much. We're talking about everything else as a third category, which is phishing and business email compromises, majority of those, right? So between these three main patterns, we're talking about 81% of the breaches. So majority, a very big majority of the breaches happen through these three patterns. In terms of the attackers, mainly come from outside, external attackers, and in terms of the motivations is very lopsided, right? It's financial. 91% of the cases, it is financial motives. Data, again, we're talking about personal data and also credentials being stolen. Another very important thing I must highlight, that every industry vertical, we talk about these top controls that are important from that industry vertical perspective. So for example, in finance and insurance, we're talking about things like implementing a security awareness program or training, right? That also can include tabletop exercises, for example, which is CSC 17. Boundary defense, which is CSC 12. We're talking about essentially, protection on the boundary perimeter, as well as multi-factor authentication, which also comes in this category, and also secure configuration, CSC 5 and 11, which essentially talks about, I would say a stitch in time saves 9 kind of thing, right? So if you can really implement security right at the implementation level, before even a system is put into production, you put some security configurations, it can really go a long way in safeguarding your interests. All right, so that's finance and insurance. So moving on to healthcare, which is again one of the favorites, a lot of personal data out there in terms of the attackers really kind of focusing on this vertical. So we are talking about top patterns that changes now. So you see in the finance and insurance vertical, you had web applications as number one. Here, miscellaneous errors are right on top, number one category, right? So between the three top patterns, we are talking about miscellaneous errors, web application, and everything else, representing about 72% of the breaches. The threat actors, 51% come from outside, but a very important insight here is that the internal attackers, actors, have gone significantly up as compared to a lot of other verticals, even including financial services. So you have a 48%, almost half of your actors are internal, and that could be because of errors as well as disgruntled employees, or with the mischief or malicious intent. But definitely errors is pretty much on the top. You do have privilege misuse right at number 4 in the patterns in terms of the healthcare industry. Motivations are obviously financial there. I would say indirect financial, because you can steal a lot of personal information and kind of sell it. But also convenience, and that goes back to the errors, right? Taking those shortcuts, which is basically the motivation by the internal attackers, actually, in terms of convenience as a motivation. We do know that in some of these sectors, we do expect with the job cuts and salary cuts happening in today's times, we do expect the grudges, insider threat, that particular motivation also going up in this particular year's data set. So I think that will be an interesting area to watch. But also I would also call out that in fact in the finance, in the accommodation sector, which I think maybe I'll touch up, but even if I don't, I would say that we are seeing interesting trend there. Point of sale systems historically did not see a lot of focus, but with these mandatory masks coming out and these requirements, I can tell you that those backstripe stealing kind of malware and those devices that can steal that information are also becoming more prevalent now, because the fraudsters are not really scared of those CCTV cameras with masks on their faces because of COVID-19 situation. So again, very interesting trends that are emerging in recent times. But back to the healthcare sector, I would say majority of the data compromises personal data. There is a lot of medical data, and I do expect that in the research times, this sector obviously hasn't seen a lot of in terms of motivations, a lot of espionage. But I can tell you that in this year, because of the research going on COVID-19, we do expect, again, that's something that can also happen, that those intellectual property, that research information in terms of one-upmanship in a lot of companies and countries, that could also happen in this year. So healthcare industries need to be very, very careful. And again, on the top controls are pretty much laid out on the slide with respect to the healthcare sector. Well, manufacturing again is beset by external attackers using a lot of password dumper malware and stolen credentials to hack into the system and steal information, because they have a lot of intellectual property out there, right? Years of research. So as you can see, in the manufacturing, a different trend emerges. Pretty much top 3 are crimeware, and that includes malware, of course. Web applications on number 2, and privilege misuse, a strong internal actors with malicious intent emerging there in the privilege misuse pattern, right? So top 3 contribute to about 64% of the breaches. And again, actor motives, as you can see, espionage, very, very significant, but pretty much higher than many other industries in terms of not only industrial espionage, but also state-sponsored espionage at times. But I think majority of it is to do with the industrial espionage, to steal secrets and intellectual property, to take advantage of the research work that may have been done. The top controls in this industry are essentially about boundary defense, CSC 12, implementing a security awareness and training program again, and data protection. I think back to the intellectual property part, I think implementing, I'm a big advocate of this point that, if you can really have a data-centric security model, it can really go a long way. You can definitely implement a lot of data-centered security, but I think data-centric security, focus on the data itself and start from there and then go outwards towards the data center, is the right approach in my view. So that's on the manufacturing vertical. And like I said, right, accommodation and food services, you do see crimeware, web application, and point of sale representing about 61% of the breaches. But then point of sale, we do, it is quite less in compared to last year's. But I think in COVID-19 times, we may expect this to go up a little bit because of the reason I mentioned in terms of, the bad guys not being deterred by the CCTV cameras because the faces are now covered with masks, right? So they can't really, they won't be much scared of being caught easily. So again, data compromise, majority of the data compromise is payment information. Obviously, these are talking about hotels and food services industry, accommodation, hospitality sector, and you see payment information is there. So a lot of credit card, debit card data breaches happen in this sector, and a lot of personal information also gets stolen in terms of the data compromised. Again, top controls, limitation and control on network ports, protocols, CSC9, boundary defense, and data protection is again the top controls here. So that's just a glimpse of some of the industries I thought I can cover before I get into the key takeaways. So now we have kind of moved up from the industries. Let's dive into what are the main key takeaways, just to kind of summarize some of the important insights from the report. I think one of the things that we do see is majority of the attackers, and there are certain myths, right? You can always read those doomy, gloomy stories online about the insiders, these attackers that are hiding somewhere in the organization. Well, that is important, but that's not all to the story. That's not everything. Shady internal attackers or actors do exist, but the majority of the attackers, as we see, are external attackers. So that's one myth that we may want to correct through our report. But we are not saying, don't get us wrong, we're not saying that you should not focus on the internal attackers. You must, because one, it is very difficult to detect them, and secondly, to handle them. But in terms of sheer numbers, we're just saying that external attackers are very, very huge. And I do call it pretty much in terms of internet background radiation, right? You will always have those attacks. So there is a bit of a bias in this data. You would always have external attackers high in number. But again, this is an important thing we must correct, and that will also help you prioritize in terms of your efforts. The second myth is we do get espionage as a major headline, those stealing information under the hood kind of thing, but it accounts for just 10% of the breaches in this year's of data, right? Majority of the breaches continue to be financially motivated. And like I said earlier, right, fertile grounds exist in terms of anonymity from the dark web perspective, and cryptocurrencies like Monero. These attacks are majority of them get done by these organized crime syndicates, which are obviously there for money, and it's a very strong reason in terms of the motivation. So money is pretty much the root of most breaches. Well, espionage definitely exists, and you must not lose focus of that also. I think certain things are not changing. Again, like I mentioned in my snake chart right at the top of the session, credential theft, social attacks, and errors cause majority of the breaches, 67% or more. Ransomware is everywhere. We do see ransomware going up, now accounts for about 27% of the malware incidents. But we do see that a lot of this is being blocked as well. So it's not like everything is the whole world, the whole, everything is going bad. The heavens are falling. No, that's not the case. But ransomware is something evolving. This is one threat that will exist for a long period of time. We do see ransomware evolving not only in incidents, but also showing up in breaches. So something to watch out for. And also web applications. I think attack on web applications were a part of 43% of the breaches, more than double the number last year. So this is something significant. And also as workflows, the workloads move towards more and more cloud-based deployments, I think that's where the attackers are also moving, and that's why you see web application attacks web applications being attacked a lot more than before. And the most common method of attacking these web applications is stolen credentials or brute force credentials, about more than 80%, and also exploitation of vulnerabilities. That is not to that high percentage, but definitely at the number 2 right there. Personal data is something which obviously is very sought after, more and more reporting requirements have really come up. GDPR is one example, which is from a global standpoint. There are also a lot of country-specific or state-specific requirements that have come up. Some regulators have also kind of tightened the noose on this reporting requirement. So definitely you see these numbers will go up. But personal data was involved in for 58% of the breaches, and again, nearly twice as much as the percentage in the last year data. So definitely something that you may need to protect, not only for your customers, consumers, but also for your employees. Also, I think errors have gone up, and it's all about making sure that you have robust governance and procedures, processes to make sure that these kind of errors don't happen. But again, reporting requirements have gone up, so that's one reason why error reportings have significantly gone up. But I think this is something that really need to be back to the whole point of due diligence, right? Making sure that you have robust governance and procedural mechanisms to make sure that you ensure repeatability and reproducibility of your controls when you are either migrating from on-premise to cloud environments, or even changing things in your existing applications, or even making sure when you are launching new products or services or web applications, you make sure that you do not fall for those silly mistakes or errors that can happen. Well, there are a lot of good news as well. I think in terms of the key takeaways, I can tell you that the DBR data that really shows us that Trojan type malware really peaked at just 50% of all breaches in 2016 and has dropped to about 6.5%, right? So I think the main point is that all those preventive technologies on the gateway, whether it is email or whether it is web or your firewall, I think all those guys that really manage these products and configure them well and operate them well really need a pat on the back. I think that thing is really helping. A lot of flux of bad stuff is getting blocked. So definitely a reason to be happy about. I think patches are also working it does go wrong in some of the cases, but we do see that less than 5% of breaches involved an exploitation of a vulnerability. Most organizations we see, they have internet-facing assets that are spread across more and more networks. And it is these assets that never get patched that can create these dangerous holes, right? So I think patching is improving, but I think a long way to go. And I think it goes back to the whole point of making sure that you know your assets. I am a strong believer of the fact that asset management is #1 focus area before you even start implementing those shiny tools, right? You need to know what you have in terms of hardware and software so you can really configure them well and patch them on time, because these kind of vulnerabilities keep coming out every now and then. So again, pretty much on the home run here, I think there are a few controls that we have requested, or rather highlighted for our readers to prioritize. There are CSC top 20, of course, as you know, 20 superset of controls, but there are a few controls we have called out, like continuous vulnerability management, not only from a patch management perspective, but also from a secure software development, right? Making sure that you do not, leave those vulnerabilities in the code itself, right from the start. Email and web browser protection is important. Again, like I said, malware, a lot of malware comes through this category, and you need to really tighten your controls on this side. Limitation and control of network ports, protocols, and services, very essential, right? A lot of lateral movement happens, collateral damage takes place. A lot of malware, the ammo has changed for some of the attackers. They don't attack from outside. What they do is they attack a user system, and then from there they go to the crown jewel, steal information, and then go out from a particular asset that may have access to internet, and there could be loads of those. So even your outbound internet access really need to be critically analyzed, and you really need to tighten controls on that side as well, including network segregation. Secure configuration, CSC 5 and 11 goes a long way. I think you need to really ensure and verify that systems are configured with only the services and access that really are needed to achieve their function. Boundary protection, must go beyond firewalls, consider network monitoring, implement SIEM to the right way. Use cases are important. Products, well, they are important, but they are not the only thing, right? Like I said earlier, they follow KeyGo principle, garbage in, garbage out, but I think you need to really configure them well, have those robust use cases, implement threat hunting, find the unknowns, and make sure that you also use multi-factor authentication. Data protection, CSC 13, I think implementing data-centric security is always a very important thing to do, and must be done. account monitoring is again very important from a identity management perspective. And also, last but not the least, very, very strong focus on this in terms of security awareness and training programs, making sure you do educate your users, not only the end users, but administrators, senior management from a tabletop exercise perspective as to how you can really safeguard yourself and handle these situations, because it can happen anytime. And you must remain in that assumed breach mindset every day. All right, pretty much that's something that I wanted to kind of talk about today. If you have any questions or feedback, you can always get in touch with me. My coordinates are mentioned on the screen in terms of my email, LinkedIn, as well as Twitter handles. And also, the team that I represent, the Verizon Threat Research Advisory Center, a lot of work that we do on multiple, streams and practices, a lot of publications that we publish. So please feel free to educate yourself, keep learning. And I think sharing is caring, of course. So that's why I think this session is there for you. Please do reach out if you have any feedback or questions. And I wish you all the best and have a great rest of the event. Thank you very much. See you. Bye-bye.